Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. Beyond the factory model, the realities of child-centered education. If you walk into a traditional classroom, you know exactly what you're looking at. The desks are lined up in neat rows, facing front. The teacher stands at the board, delivering information. The students sit, listen, take notes, and occasionally raise a hand. It's a system designed for efficiency, built on a factory model that assumes all children learn the same things, in the same way, at the same time. It's clean, it's orderly, and for a long time, we thought it worked. But if you're listening to this, you probably know that model is breaking down. We've realized that trying to force 30 distinct personalities into a single mold doesn't just bore them. It actively hinders their ability to think. This is where child-centered education comes in. It's a phrase that gets tossed around in teacher prep programs and professional development seminars until it starts to lose its meaning, sounding like just another buzzword to put on a lesson plan. But when you strip away the jargon, child-centered education boils down to a radical but simple premise. The student, not the curriculum, is the starting point. For future educators, getting a handle on this isn't just about passing a philosophy of education exam. It's about survival in the modern classroom. It's about understanding that you cannot force a child to learn, but you can create an environment where they can't help but learn. We are going to look at what that actually means on the ground, not in the glossy theory books, but in the messy, complicated reality of working with kids. The historical backbone. It's not new. First off, let's clear up a misconception. Child-centered education isn't some new age fad invented by millennials to coddle children. It has deep roots. We're standing on the shoulders of giants who pushed back against the empty vessel theory of childhood centuries ago. You have to look at John Dewey. If you haven't wrestled with Dewey yet, you will. Back in the early 20th century, he was already pointing out that the disconnect between school and real life was a major problem. He argued that education shouldn't be a preparation for life. It is life. When we treat school as just a holding pen until adulthood, we rob children of their agency. Dewey wanted schools to be democratic communities where students learned by doing, not just by listening. Then you have Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky, who gave us the psychological framework for this. Piaget showed us that children aren't just mini adults with less knowledge. They think differently. They build their understanding of the world through interaction. Vygotsky added the social layer, reminding us that learning happens between people before it happens inside a person. These aren't just abstract ideas. They are the reasons why a lecture on photosynthesis often fails where a hands-on gardening project succeeds. And we can't talk about child-centeredness without mentioning Maria Montessori. She saw that if you give children the right tools and get out of their way, they are capable of immense focus and self-discipline. Her concept of the prepared environment is key. It's not about chaos. It's about careful structure that allows for freedom. So, when a veteran teacher rolls their eyes and tells you this is just the flavor of the month, you can confidently say that we've been trying to get this right for over 100 years. The staying power of these ideas suggests there's something fundamental about human nature at play here. The core philosophy, constructivism in action. At the heart of child-centered education is constructivism. That's a $10 word for a simple idea. Knowledge is built, not transferred. You can't just open a kid's head and pour in the state standards. They have to hook new information onto what they already know. They have to wrestle with it, reshape it, and make it their own. In a teacher-centered room, the teacher is the broadcaster. In a child-centered room, the teacher is the architect. You design the experience, but the student does the building. This shifts the power dynamic. It acknowledges that the student brings something to the table. Their background, their interests, their specific way of processing the world. This approach respects the whole child. That sounds fluffy, but it's practical. A child who is hungry, scared, or feeling alienated isn't going to learn algebra. You can't separate the academic brain from the emotional body. Child-centered educators know that if you don't address the social and emotional needs, the cognitive stuff just won't stick. It's about recognizing that a student acting out might not be bad. They might be frustrated, bored, or struggling with something you can't see. The role of the teacher. The guide on the side myth. There's a cliché you'll hear, be the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. It's catchy, but it's a bit misleading. It makes it sound like you just stand back and watch. The reality is much harder. Being a child-centered teacher is exhausting because it requires hyper-awareness. You aren't just delivering a script. You are constantly scanning the room. Who is engaged? Who is checking out? Who is struggling with the material? And who is struggling with their partner? You are making 1,000 micro-decisions every hour. You have to know when to step in and scaffold the learning, and when to hold back and let them struggle a bit. That productive struggle is where the real neural connections happen. You also have to be an expert on your students. In a factory model, you teach the subject. In this model, you teach the student. That means you need to know what makes them tick. If you're teaching persuasive writing and you know you have a class obsessed with video games, you don't assign a generic prompt about school uniforms. You let them argue whether esports should be in the Olympics. You use their interests as the hook to drag them into the skills they need. This requires humility. You have to be okay with not knowing the answer. You have to be okay with a lesson going off the rails because a student asked a question that was more interesting than what you planned. You have to be flexible enough to pivot. It's improv comedy meets cognitive science. The physical environment, breaking the rows. The environment is often called the third teacher, and for good reason. The physical layout of your room screams your philosophy before you even open your mouth. Rows of desks facing the front say, "I am the authority, look at me." Clusters of desks or tables say, "We are a community, look at each other." A child-centered classroom looks different. It's often messier. There is movement. You might see flexible seating, beanbags, standing desks, rugs. This isn't just to be trendy. It's about ownership. If a child is uncomfortable, they focus on their discomfort, not their work. Giving them a choice in where and how they sit validates their autonomy. You also see resources accessible to the kids. In a traditional room, the teacher guards the supplies. In a child-centered room, the art supplies, the books, the math manipulatives are out and available. The message is, these are your tools, use them to figure it out. It fosters independence. You stop being the gatekeeper of pencils and start being the facilitator of projects.